Franklin County Commissioners meeting, October 29th, 2019.
Yours says 9. Oh, it's almost. Good morning. It is 9 a.m. We're here for our last board meeting of October 29th already. So we have the full desk of commissioners. Keith, our administrator, Karen, our clerk, and I have an audience. If you would please join me for the pledge. The Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our first item on the agenda this morning is WSU Extension. Tim, is Gwen still coming, or you got her today?
I can't get a hold of her. I could give you a brief update. I'm not sure what's going on.
Do you think she's coming? We could wait.
Can you skip on the agenda? I apologize.
Yeah, we can move the agenda around a little bit. Sure.
Okay,
Sure. That would bring us to a public hearing for Declaration County.
Mr. Chairman, I just note that I think the statutes prevent us from starting a hearing before the advertised.
You are exactly right. Yes.
It will start at 9 o'clock.
Was it advertised for 9? Okay, then we're good. Thank you.
Okay. Well, if it's advertised for that, we'll carry on then for a public hearing for Declaration County owned surplus. Matt, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, this is a public hearing for the surplus declaration of county-owned property through the Motor Vehicle Fund, commonly referred to as the Equipment Rental and Revolving Fund. Also, the Franklin County Facilities Department, and with that, also an authorization of disposal via public auction. The specific description of those, and these were also listed in the public notice, is a 2003 Chevy pickup truck, a 1993 Peterbilt truck, a 2009 Dodge Ram cab and chassis. We also have 26 used broom cores and one Miller Bobcat 225 portable welder. And so with that, I'll just be here for questions should the board have any.
Under this also is the Facilities Department listed under your Murville.
What we did was when we were going through this process, we just reach out to the Sheriff Department facilities and we just include them with our surplus declarations and our public hearing. So we just do it on their behalf.
Okay.
The chairman was suggesting you didn't read the last one, I don't believe, the 2000 Chevy pickup truck for facilities. You read the 2003 Chevy.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I missed that. That's
why I was checking to see if
correct.
that was included in your surplus.
Yep, and that's in the notice of public hearing as well, and that's the 2000 Chevy pickup truck. Thank you. I apologize.
All right. No, that's. With that, I will open the public hearing for anybody that yay or nay for this auction to handle. Go to auction. Seeing none, commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, move for approval of Resolution 2019-324 as presented. I don't have any comments or questions, but not opposed to discussion.
I second.
Okay. There's no discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Matt.
Great. Just wanted to let Karen know I do have a file here that has the titles for the chairman
signature
for the chairman to sign. All of the locations have been highlighted and marked with an X for you, so they may be on the front and back of the titles for you. So I'll turn that over.
Well, I'll sign it before I leave the desk here today.
Right.
So
I won't take them back whenever you get them done.
okay, thank you. Carly, would you, see Gwen isn't here yet, so conversion of one accounting assistant 3 position to accounting investment specialist.
Morning, thank you. The request before you today is on behalf of the Franklin County Treasurer and is the product of a number of months' worth of work in partnership between our 2 offices to really fine-tune and identify the work that is being completed by one of the 2 accounting assistant 3 positions within the Treasurer's office. I don't have a whole lot to add in addition to what was in the read ahead, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions, Commissioners? Looks like there's been a lot of research and time involved, and I did read the read ahead. So. If there's no questions, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, move for approval of Resolution 2019-325 as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Carly.
Thanks, Freddie.
Tim, have you been able to get a hold of Glenn? Oh, he's not. He just went out. Not there. I couldn't see behind Jeffrey. Well, we're waiting. We'll go on to public comment. Anybody like to speak to the board this morning?
Jeff Robinson. I live in Commissioner Peck's district. I actually am rising today in pride at this commission. I sat through the budget workshops and I was pretty darn impressed with the level of professionalism that I saw, how open the process was. And I especially appreciated that you were willing to stop and ask questions that I don't think you would normally ask, if somebody who didn't know about budgets, being me obviously, was in the room. So I just wanted to thank you all very much. I found that to be an exciting and informative process, well as exciting as budgets can be, and you made me proud. So I just wanted to come up and say that to you. It's important to acknowledge when somebody does something right, not just to tear them down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak? Tim, what'd you find out?
She's en route. She had a personnel issue this morning, so if we could put her at the end of the agenda, that would work for us. So
Okay, we'll carry on to pay the bills then.
Mr. Chairman, we have one fiscal note this morning. This is fund expenditures. Move for approval of fund expenditures in the total amount of $368,364.64 as presented. Note that it's been reviewed by County Administrator and 2 members of the Auditor's Office.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That was one and only this morning, Commissioner?
One and only.
Okay. We have a consent agenda in front of you. It's quite extensive, 15 items. What's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, move for approval of consent agenda as presented. Open to any discussion.
I second with discussion on agenda item 15.
Any discussion?
Carly, may I get your presence, please? I appreciate the fact that you've rewritten this and put it in the policy that any cash payments received in lieu of vehicle contributions will be grossed down in the amount and applicable employer rolls taxes to ensure all employees receive the same employer contribution equivalency.
She left you.
Oh. My question is...
Thought I'd get back before you were done.
I'm back. My question is, there's only 7 right now that are taking this in cash contributions. Why is that? Why aren't any of the other 50 participating in cash? Is this because of union contracts?
There are 2 employee groups who don't participate in VIVA. There's the appraisers bargaining unit, and there's the elected officials who are their own group. So there's 12 in that group, and I believe 5 in the appraisers group.
Okay.
In terms of, what was the rest of the
Well,
question?
the other 50, they're taking it in VIVA. At some point in time, their VIVA accounts are going to get pretty healthy. Why can't they transfer to salary too, then take it in as salary? Is there a reason why?
The
whole
number
group has
50
to.
is that of people who waive, because we have 61 people who are waiving coverage as of today.
There's 61 now? It was
61.
57 when you did the analysis for it.
Yeah, and sometimes that's a moving target depending on people have different qualifying events. I know there's been some changes in how benefits for school district employees are handled
Okay.
by the state, and so we've had people who have now waived their coverage with the county because their spouse is a school district employee, so they have some other arguably taxpayer-funded coverage, with another entity.
So
But
61 are waiving. How many total employees are there in the courthouse?
there are about, depending on the day, about 275 benefits eligible employees.
275 total, okay. And of those 61, why can't the others, after their VIVA accounts are healthy in the amount of contributions, can't they transfer to salary?
The participation in VIVA is based on employee group. So generally speaking, you have groups of employees that are like situated. So you have bargaining units, you have the elected officials, and then you have non-bargaining employees. So the entire group has to go. So with the bargaining units, that would be a collective bargaining conversation.
Okay, that's what I was getting to. It's then it would have to be a collective group by the union's consent.
Correct. And so with the appraisers, that was something that was bargained into their contract prior to, just about at the beginning of my time with the county.
Okay.
With the elected officials, they went through a process where the elected officials met together and decided as a group that they wished to opt out of this program.
Isn't the simple answer that they can? It's just they have to do it as a group.
They can by mutual agreement with the county,
As a group.
as a group, all or nothing.
Just like the electeds did as a group.
As a
Yes,
group,
as a group, all or nothing.
all or nothing.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Okay. No further questions on the consent agenda? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thanks, Carolyn. Keith?
Just one item, kind of requesting input. We have received an opportunity to weigh in public comment periods related to the Hanford site. One is what's called a tri-party agreement, or TPA, between the U.S. Department of Energy, U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and the Washington State Department of Ecology. They want to make some changes to this tri-party agreement regarding cleanup, and they have made available a public comment period, have invited a number of different stakeholders that may be interested in providing public comments to participate in that process. That comment period closes on the 29th of November. And a second one related specifically to the LERF, which is the liquid emulsified, I don't remember what LERF exactly stands for, but it's a liquid waste treatment facility, and Area 200 out there, dangerous waste permit modification. We don't necessarily have the technical expertise in-house to weigh in at a substantial level on these items, but if the board feels it's necessary for us to make a public comment, then we'd probably have to retain some expertise in this area to make a public comment. My recommendation is I don't think it's essential or necessary based on what they're proposing to do, but if the desires of the board are to weigh in on it, we certainly can.
So Keith, how did those come to us?
They were just mailed to us.
You and I could take a couple of minutes outside the meeting and look at them. I'm aware that I may be the only one that's worked in that environment for half a dozen years or so. My interest would be whether or not any of them have to do with airborne emissions of any kind that might potentially impact downwind farmlands or anything. It doesn't sound like they are, but sometimes they do airstripping.
Sure.
Some of these components too. So I'd be happy to look at them. The second observation I would make is that we have a representative on the Hanford Advisory Board that is tracking these things, and we probably should, with an email, at least solicit any comments or advice.
Certainly happy to make that connection with them.
Okay.
That's all I have, Tim. I'm trying to stall here, but we may need to postpone it for another.
I do have a comment on our person, or the Hanford. Gary Burnett was our the advisor for a person, and he is retired. And Mike Burnett is our alternate. We will need to come up with a board for a person
To replace Gary's. Okay.
We could take a 5-minute recess. If you had all you wanted, Keith?
Yeah.
No exec today?
No.
Okay. While we finish signing these, and we'll see if we can catch up with Gwen.
X-raying those apples.
Getting frisked at the security.
There was a nice Pasco police officer, Leslie Turtle. Sorry.
We are back in this session after a short recess. Welcome, Gwen.
Hi. Sorry for being late. Hopefully those apples made for a good apology.
They were fabulous. Thank you.
Did you try them?
Oh, yeah. They lasted about an hour. And you gave us just enough time to sign all of our consent documents, so really, you didn't delay us at all.
Good. Okay, so I just had 4 things, kind of briefly to update you on. And sorry, I'm still trying to catch my breath.
Yeah, that's all right.
So, so I don't know if you heard in the news, but there's 3 new invasive critters that unfortunately get one of each of the commodities that I work in here. So the first one.
Great mealy bug? Give you a break?
Yeah.
No, the first one is Phylloxera. So thank you. I literally ran from the other end of the parking lot. So the first one is grape Phylloxera. And we have traditionally been thought that that one hasn't been known to be in Washington State. It's been in like early detection of ones from 1900, but it's sort of been in one isolated spot. It's in the news that it's pretty much widespread. So that one is the one that it instills panic and fear because it's like a little aphid. It's not an aphid, but it looks like a little aphid that lives and eats on the roots of the grapevine. And so WSU has already put together a task force where we've gone through, and they found it first in Walla Walla. And we've gone down and done education with Walla Walla growers and so forth. And then we're also putting together a grant task force team to do work on mapping and insect pesticide resistance, what's the longevity. In the end, we tout ourselves as being own-rooted vines, because if it freezes, you just grow it back up. We will eventually move to rootstocks. So the rest of the world has this problem. We in Washington never did. And so we will have to adjust, but it isn't fatal. But some news reports have made it seem more dire than that. Yeah, but it's not so dire.
Gwen, any idea what what brought it here now? Is it climatological? Is it something brought in mechanically from outside? Is it
Like all good invasive pests, it's usually people. So it moves on rootstock, nursery stocks. So we do have a clean plant center, and we do have a pretty strict quarantine on bringing in no suitcase vines, is what they call it, right? But that wasn't always the case. There's a lot of cuttings from the 90s, 2000s that are suitcase vines. So we have climate that, in sandy soils, that slow the population growth, but don't eliminate the population growth. So you'll see these blanket statements that say, it doesn't exist in sandy soils. Well, greater than 60% sand. But very few of our soils are greater than 60% sand. So we have climates that slow it, but not eliminate it. So mainly it's people. Soil movement, anything where you have soil can move with the roots, can move this insect.
like critters on your boat?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So the point with that is that the news stories can be, and there were a couple, that come out where they say the end of Napa Valley Cabernet or the end of Washington wine. It's not really the end. It's just this.
Stock up now.
Yeah. So it's just an adjustment period for the industry. And the industry, this week we have a phylloxera task force meeting. The industry is aware of what's going to happen. They know that there's ways to overcome it. The rest of the world has done a lot of research on it. We're just going to figure out what's best for Washington. So the other one that's come hasn't hit the news yet, but the blueberry industry, we're number one in the nation for blueberry production as far as tonnage. And half of those blueberries come from eastern Washington. And of those, Benton and Franklin is the majority, right, of where the acreage is. And so eastern Washington blueberries are important to us. There is a new virus that a small grower experienced this problem. It took several years to diagnose. He's pretty isolated. So the only things around him are sage and tree fruit. So there's no other blueberry blocks. And but he saw decline. And eventually I was able to send it off with a virologist, some samples that we went through deep sequencing. So it's like, hey, we don't know what it is, but let's just throw it in and we'll look for everything. That's kind of what the deep sequencing does. And it came back as tobacco ring spot virus. So that's a virus that's vectored by nematodes. And it is the first time that it's been present in Washington. So there's a virologist, myself, on this side, virologist out of WSU Prosser's R&E Center, and myself and a horticulturist from the west side, that we're working with the Blueberry Commission to basically work on this. Right now it's just one block. But just because you've never looked anywhere doesn't mean that it isn't everywhere, right? But we don't have anybody else reporting some of the same symptoms. But that's sort of what we're trying to do, explore mechanisms for control of the nematode and the virus, and then do surveys around the state to see if anybody else has seen something like this, to see if there's presence of it in other places.
So you said the name of it was tobacco ring spot?
Yep. And it exists in a wide host of plants. Lots of, like tomato can get it, blueberries.
What nematode vector is it?
Dagger nematode.
And
Now
what are
the good.
symptoms? What are the symptoms that they're seeing on this?
What are the symptoms?
Yeah.
So it looks initially, that's part of the research project, is to sort of document it in our area. So initially it looks like one flagging shoot, one sick shoot, but eventually what happens is that the plant will flower and get berries. All the berries sort of come about on the top of the plant anyway, the top of the shoot. But you'll get those berries, but they never really turn blue. They're green, they're sickly looking, and then there's no leaves. Or if there's leaves, the leaves are only like 2 or 3 millimeters big. So it's a weird looking shoot. So it's a shoot, and it has these little tiny dwarf leaves and this cluster of berries at the top. Now I always think, well, evolutionarily, that makes sense because the plant is going to say, one last hurrah, take my fruit and just spread it, right? But what happens is that the plant actually will sort of senesce. After that time period, there's about a month that it senesces. The blueberries seem to drop off. Some stayed, some dropped. And then all of a sudden it'll get in the middle of the summer a flush of growth of leaves, but the whole plant still looks sick. They're not nice deep red shoots, and the leaves are more yellow and pale. And then by the next year or the year after, it's dead. So it kind of gives a little false hope. So the first year we were looking at it, we thought, oh, there's some other viruses that do this to the plant as well. And so we kept testing for some of those viruses. And it turned out none of those, of course, but we just waited to see. And then the next year, well, so if it leafed, so does it recover the next year? And it doesn't. So
and tobacco did the same thing, and that's why it's got the name?
I think it was originally found on tobacco, yeah.
And to get rid of this as a nematode is to fumigate before you plant your blueberries, or?
That could be one option if you know that you have a lot of nematodes going in, but you also have to have the presence of, this again is that nursery or human spread. So it's really important to go back to the nurseries and make sure, because blueberries are brought in potted plants. So if you have dirt, you're moving things that live in dirt, like viruses, nematodes, things like that. Now, there's a pretty strict protocol for trying to eliminate any of that, but there's always things happen,
And
right?
fumigate only lasts 1 year.
It suppresses it, right, as it goes through. But here's the cool thing, is that nematodes, this type or species of nematodes, when they molt, they shed the virus as well. So if you can one of the things that we're looking at is putting in a physical barrier. They'll go up and down a row, but they don't go between rows very much. They're not very mobile, so they just kind of like go to where they can find the next little host of something. So if we can put a physical barrier that limits the nematode movement in a row, and then we can plant something that the nematodes will actually live on for a year, as they molt, they shed that virus. And if that virus doesn't hold, there's many plants that the nematode will feed on, but the virus doesn't infect. So we're looking at that option as a way that you don't pull everything out, you don't have to fumigate. Most of our Eastern Washington blueberries are organic. So we really don't you can't just fumigate a small section. You would take your whole block out of that. And that's not a great option for us in Eastern Washington. So we're trying to take advantage of the biology of it and see if that works. Because we know plants that the nematode will live on, but the virus, it's a very well-known virus. It's just not well known to us in blueberries.
Well, the tobacco industry had to combat this long ago. What did they do to resolve
Tobacco
it?
isn't organic, so they can most
can do
tobacco
whatever they want,
right.
yeah.
Most tobacco isn't organic,
Yeah.
but there is a lot of research in other places that we're pulling in. That's how we know about the nematodes shedding it, the virus won't stay. I mean, there are other places that have blueberry and tobacco ring spot virus. That's why we know so much anyway. So we're just trying a few things on this one block and then trying to do an investigation to see what does the rest of the industry look like. It's a little bit quiet. There haven't been any news stories on it yet because, we're just now talking with the blueberry industry, and they're just sort of saying, yep, let's investigate it. So this will be our first year going forward. So then the last one that you probably have heard of, you're worried about cherries. So, I need to block up on blueberries. Right now, the growers are concerned, like this week, about cold hardiness, right? So we also do cold hardiness modeling and studies out of our lab, and they're looking very cold hardy. So in some of the warmer spots, they're cold hardy to 8 degrees. Some of the colder spots, they're cold hardy to -2 already. So I think that these next couple days will get through just fine for the blueberry industry because it is supposed to drop down to being pretty cold. But a lot of the growers are a little concerned. And then this year, we've been doing this research for, I think I'm on my 7th year, something like that. There's an end in sight here. So this year, we're taking all that data and we're building a model that goes up onto AgWeatherNet, and growers will be able to track what their weather is close to them to say how dormant does my plant is right now. So that's what we've been doing for 7 years. So, but of this week and last night, there were a lot of text messages to me about how cold hardy everything is, and I think this will be fine over the next 2 days. Little cherry virus is another one that's in the news all the time, right? So little cherry virus is a devastating disease, and we are at very large epidemic sweeping levels in this valley. So little cherry disease is a disease that really is made up of it's caused by 3 different organisms. And so it really, epidemiology should have named it something different, right? Because north of I-90, it's caused by little cherry virus 1 and 2. We have something that is called Western X. Now they just call it X disease, but you'll see Western X still. X disease is a phytoplasma. It's kind of like a bacteria/virus, right? It's the same thing, kind of organism that causes mad cow disease. Not the exact same, but it's the same classification. So Western X, the only treatment we have for it, it makes little tiny cherries, it spreads easily through cuttings, and the only treatment is to cut the tree and Roundup. And so we have, in Yakima, they're pulling out whole blocks. Up here, they're pulling up whole blocks. Right now, they're trying to just cut and mitigate. But there are examples in our Pacific Northwest, in British Columbia, in Oregon, where they lost whole industries that went down for periods of time because they had to remove so many trees. So the tree fruit industry is extremely serious. So the Tree Fruit Research Commission's entire cherry budget and some of its reserves are going towards nothing but little cherry disease this year. So there is every extension person and researcher who has anything to do with cherries, from people who are doing engineering and sensing, how could we detect it sooner, to how much Roundup do we put on to make sure, are the roots being, it can be, it's vectored and transferred through root grafting. So if the 2 roots touch each other and they grow together, then that one infects this one, which then infects this one, which goes down the line. So everybody's looking at it.
Do you have any help from our horticulture group that I know they're out trapping?
Yeah, from the Franklin County.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing. So we're bringing in all the pest boards. All the pest boards are coming in. I've already talked to them. There's a meeting in November where we're looking at what's the role of them all and how do we legally get little cherry disease put on everybody's list. So you can't, because you have the backyard folks, but you also have some growers who say, well, maybe I don't want to quite cut it down. That's not going to work, right? Well, maybe I could get one more good year out of it. The one more good year that's not our mentality. Our mentality is we have to be swift in order to minimize it. So we do have there's probably 30 members total going out from federal to local grants and looking at this from all sorts of education to the pest boards. We're trying every avenue, and it's a pretty organized team. And we're doing it because 98% of the samples that are brought in, that doesn't mean 98% of the tree fruit, right? It means a tree looks sick. In our lower valley, we bring it in, it tests positive. That's a lot of positives that are brought in, right? So the cherry industry, it's their number 1 threat for the next couple of years. So you'll see a lot of news stories out about it.
So how is this, you're saying if the roots touch the roots, it transfers the disease. Does it go airborne too?
No,
How is it getting to so many trees?
When we prune, when we go in, we prune, so anything fluid to fluid.
Oh, so
right?
if they use those pruners in one orchard and go to another orchard,
If they use those pruners on one tree and go to the next tree.
They can transfer it.
Mm-hmm.
So early detection is really important.
Early detection is really, really critical.
And we're finding the same true in transfer of other diseases
Mm-hmm.
like daughter and when they till a field and they go to another field, they're transferring these diseases or these plants to other fields.
similar to phylloxera. Like if you take dirty dirt, if you take tractors and there's dirt on those tractors and it had a little phylloxera in it, you move it to the next block, you now have phylloxera in the next block. So sanitation is huge.
You said dirty dirt.
Dirty dirt,
So-
dirty
soil-
tires.
Every soil scientist
Sorry.
that lives is cringing.
I know. Listen, I still say bugs and dirt. So, so one legal issue, my last update for you on the 4, is Senate Bill 5550 passed this past year. And it is a bill that affects us here. I'm sitting on that committee because it was a proposal that came from a previous Senate bill last year to explore what we need to do to improve worker safety and communication. So Senate Bill 5550 basically had 2 split outs. One for the committee that I'm working on is looking at ground and some aerial application, but looking at how community or departments like Department of Health, LNI, any department collecting human exposure, drift data, any incidences, any of those, they don't share any information right now. If it's in LNI, it's in LNI's database. If it's in DOH, it's in DOH's database. Nothing is ever shared. And so therefore you have no analysis of really what are those agents that would help us in human exposure and drift. The other part that's in there, so there's one part that's going to look at how can we communicate better and share information that we're already collecting, and then what pieces are we missing that need to be collected. And then the other component is what are the recommendations that we would be giving to the legislature about drift reduction technologies or mechanisms to reduce drift. So it started from a Senate bill that was passed to investigate whether or not we would do notification every time a spray occurred, and whether there would be a joint application database. So every time a pesticide, at the end of the year, a pesticide was applied, you take your data and you'd have to upload it into a shared database that was run by DOH. That Senate bill, the senators and representatives who investigated it quickly learned that it is not feasible for growers to notify 4 days of advance in every spray. That is just not something that can occur in any commodity. And if it did create a system, they would just put a notification in every day, because who knows what the wind is going to do and the weather and how it's going to be and so forth. So they actually said this is not something we really, that notification system, we have to come up with a different and better notification system. But one thing that did come out of that is that shared information is still possible. And growers actually were, because of Global Gap, they have to share all that information anyway. You know, so they weren't too upset. Go get it from the packing houses. The packing houses have our pesticide records anyway. That notification system isn't on the docket anymore, but looking at ways to improve data analysis with respect to human exposure and how to reduce human exposure and drift completely is what the next 5 years is about on that committee. So I'm not sure if it will cover ground sprayers, it will cover some aerial application, et cetera, and I can update you as it continues. It's a very slow process sitting on that legislature. It's a little slower than I'm used to. So I might, once a year, give you a small update.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting process.
Yeah.
Can you help me out with the spelling of the wine root disease that you went over first?
Phylloxera.
Yeah.
PHY.
PHY?
Yeah, PHYLOXERRA.
L-O what?
X.
X? E-R-A?
Or
Two
double
R's.
R.
2 R's.
Oh, 2 R's? Okay. Thank you.
Spelling isn't my forte.
Mine either.
Spelling test, yeah. You just got done running across the parking lot. That was your spelling test.
And the other obnoxious weed that we're finding getting transferred out there is nutshedd. And that thing is just running rampant in fields right now,
Yeah.
as his daughter. And if anybody doesn't know what dodder is a plant that'll grow, and it grows into the other plant, sucks out the chloroform, so it can't have photosynthesis, and it destroys the plant.
Yeah.
And
That's
that's just one that gets misidentified a lot, unfortunately. So it looks like a grass if you don't get out and look at it.
Right.
And so we've seen that a lot north of Pasco. It's really spreading. So we've been.
And I think it's from the implements going from
It's
field
from
to field.
implements. It's from so they spread from nutlets actually that are produced underneath the ground, and more so than seed. And they do get dragged around with discs and rippers, and everybody shares and trades ground. It's a really tough one to
And
control.
it's hard to get rid of.
It's
as
really
is
hard.
nutshell. We found in alfalfa that we're spraying and we're trying all different things, and you just can't kill that darn stuff.
We've recommended to people when they find a small patch on the edge of the field to actually take an excavator and dig out that small patch and get that soil out of production. It's if you can find it early, it's more effective doing that than chemical means.
Sandia we're working with
Yep.
the chemical Sandia seems to be doing a
And
pretty
corn,
good job.
and corn that works
Yes.
real well.
Or
But
just
it's got
leave the ground bare and just spray it.
Yep, it's got a longer plant backs for other rotation crops are a little bit tighter, but it's that's one we definitely want to give.
We're having our
rotation.
challenges too,
Yeah.
in row crops and crops.
Yeah.
So.
There is a new weed scientist on the docket being hired by WSU.
Yeah, that's right. I'm on the
So-
search committee for
Yeah,
that.
you're on the search committee, update them.
Yep.
So
Brandis is
there is a
coming.
new weed scientist coming, and that's really great because we haven't had somebody really focused in this region in a long time, and a lot of us have been shouting that is a true need.
And that'll be based in Prosser, not in Pullman. So they'll be at the Prosser Extension Center, so they'll be working in the Columbia Basin almost exclusively.
Very good.
We need help.
Yep.
Mr. Peck, you had a question.
I've seen ads, not so much this year, but in previous years, of people taking out blueberry plots and selling those plants literally out of their truck in the Oaks parking lot. Are there any constraints on that? Is there anything about that that's unlawful, or are they free to do that?
So blueberries, I don't know 100% if it's unlawful, it's unrecommended. So let me put it that way. So they're selling within the state of Washington. So they took from Washington, they're selling in Washington. You cannot take from Oregon and bring it up across the border. Even though bugs and dirt don't care about border lines, right? We do have some rules in that. You can't go across border.
Sure.
The same thing, that's why phylloxera moved. It moved without, the hottest spot right now is Milton Free Water in Walla Walla. And that's because those people farm contiguously. It doesn't matter where the border between the two are. So it is
So our dirty
not
dirt got
illegal.
valued by Oregon?
Yeah. It is not illegal, but it is not recommended. And it is, it is always recommended to buy in any perennial crop a certified disease-free, because that means that they're looking for the diseases that we certify against, and tobacco ring spot was one of them. The nursery where this person got their plants has a multi-step process to make sure that nematodes and viruses are not coming. So we don't know if the nematodes were in this person's land to start with, or if they were part of that nursery block. And you'll almost never be able to go back and prove which one. All we can do from now is say, is the nursery's process, can we find any mechanism for where there might be weaknesses? And the nurseries generally, they want us to help them, right?
Can't
And
you
then
go to
how do we
the
move
other
forward?
clients from that same nursery who have taken plants and compare the two?
A lot of them already know. So a lot of them have already been out on this guy. It doesn't take long before it starts moving through the farmer network about what's going on, right? It isn't like in common public. But I never
Seems like you could
recommend.
distinguish whether it was the plant or the soil. If you got 30 clients out of one nursery and it's only showing up in one place, it's likely the soil, not the nursery.
Yeah, but nematodes tend to be really patchy in their distribution. So you could have
So it
gotten.
could still be.
It could, yeah. So that adds to the difficulty there. They're not really uniform.
In the phylloxera, there's a really interesting genetic test that because they don't move very much, one of the things we're going to do is go back and you can see what clone they belong to, so we can see where we think they got introduced from. So that will be interesting to see. Not
Kind of like tracking isotopes.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing.
Yep. So that will occur this year as part of trying to say, so where were the points of weakness? Was it too many suitcase finds? Was it that there was a failure in, we can trace it back to a lot of people have won, including our mother blocks. When we were first starting, some of our mother blocks came from vineyards that were in California. So did that come with that? How did that appear? So, and it's very hard. These are bugs that are a millimeter or less, and you're digging up dirt, and it's very exciting when you see them as an entomologist, but it is, they're very challenging because they too only have like small distribution, and it's right here in this spot, but not 2 rows over.
Does fire kill it?
No, it's underground. Kill the roots and kill the bugs.
I was just wondering if California's not going to have a problem pretty soon.
I know, they would have blown through everything. It was a little interesting in Prosser last night.
In my question about the tobacco industry, I thought maybe there was something that could take it out as far as another organism. No?
Biological control.
Right.
No,
As
not
we're
really.
fighting with the tackweed, there is biological control.
Yeah, viruses are harder. Viruses, they're just harder. They live inside the plant, and either the plant overcomes it or it kills the plant. Not very many viruses want to be symbiotic. They just kill the plant. So, anyway,
Thanks for the good news.
Hey, I thought of what are the things you're going to hear in the news that somebody might say, so did you hear what's happening with my cherries? So,
There's nothing messing with the Cosmic Crisp apples, right?
Yeah.
So far.
Besides just general lack of supply that everyone's frustrated at. The price is good. There's 2, this year there's just 2 grades that are going to go out. So there's actually a lot because they're trying that first year to have the highest quality. So normally we pack 9 grades. There's 2 grades of Cosmic Crisp this year. So that highest quality is going to go out. I always say, listen, I don't think they're going to be in the supermarket in Prosser because somebody in California is going to pay a whole lot more per pound than I will. Right?
They're probably not any more susceptible to the cold weather than other apples. Right?
No, they're not. They'll be fine. And the growers, there's going to be a lot on the market. They are a great science experiment for your kids or grandkids in that you slice them, you slice that and you slice a gala. And then you say, oh, let's watch them brown. Let's time how long it will take. And it won't brown, right? And then you can talk to them about ethylene and how, plant hormones and how that works. So,
You're just right in your element, aren't you?
Yeah, so you can, hey, science is everywhere. All right. So, but no, I think they'll be just fine.
Do you think they'll make it through this cold patch that we got right here okay? All the apples will?
Yeah, I don't think this cold is fine. They're trying to harvest them. There is a great image, if you're not on our Facebook page, but there was an amazing drone footage of Stamilt last night where they're trying to pick everything they can as fast as they can because that cold, we went through one sustained cold period, but there isn't great research out there, but the best research that we have is from Penn State, and it says anything colder than 24 degrees for 4 hours is going to affect the quality of that apple hanging on a tree. And it's loose science at that because you have to basically, it's not a repeatable study, easily repeatable study. And so this next coming, they want it as much as they could. But if you go to the WSU Tree Fruit Facebook page, there's an amazing drone image of Stamilt has brought out an army of automated picking machines or semi-automated mechanistic picking machines where they have been a specific company who's making this machine where they can take it, they stick it in a vacuum tube, or they can turn around and just put it in a bin, and there's just dozens of them out there so that they can go as quick as they can, right? So people are harvesting and trying to move through. And the grapes, that frost that took down all the leaves, that was not a problem for the grapes, but it was a problem for growers who hadn't reached sugars yet. And it's a problem because you crinkle and crunch the leaves. When the leaves turn brown, when they go through with the harvester, that shreds the leaves, and the leaves then go in with the grapes, and that affects grape quality. So a lot of winemakers want to reject the load from the growers, right? There are harvesters, like a Pelunk harvester, that has a sensor on the back, and it kicks out MOG, material other than grape. So its fruit was coming out pretty clean, but not everybody uses that type of harvester. They use different harvesters, no machines. So there are some cases of people being rejected because they either didn't reach sugars before that cold, and any sugars they accumulated after was from dehydration, not true sugar accumulation. And how dirty is the load coming in? So there's a little bit of that going on right now in the grape industry.
Anything positive?
They're still getting harvested. And I thought, like, the force of people, like all these cool automated machines coming out, semi-mechanized machines. Go look at this drone image. There's like a dozen of those. You know how many farms are still people climbing on ladders? Yeah. These things, they're in business. They're going to get their apples harvested. It's amazing. You know, just amazing. And that work was all done at WSU. It's amazing that got moved forward that quickly.
Yeah.
So that's positive.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll end on that positive.
Yeah, no more black clouds.
The biggest challenge of your team is lack of passion, right?
Yeah. We hate our jobs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It shows.
Well, thanks so much
Yeah.
for this, and thanks for the
I
apples.
really am sorry that I was tardy.
Thanks for your patience.
You didn't hold us
Yeah,
up.
very much.
We're going to finish at the same time.
Okay, good.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
One more item on the agenda for public comment. Anybody like to talk?
Tried to split it up this time. I like to be positive than negative, but there is something that I do want to bring to the County Commission's attention. The legislative session, as you all know, begins in January, and one of the delightful treats that our state legislature has to decide on is whether they are going to replace the gas tax with a new program they call the mileage tax. And as I understand this program, the only way they would be able to enforce that is to activate the GPS in your car or to force you to get a GPS in your car, which means that they will be able to track where you are going, what you are doing. This is the stupidest, most unconstitutional exercise of government moronness. I'm sorry, I'm so angry it's hard. And it is essentially a discriminatory tax that is going to destroy our economy in eastern Washington. Because we are a rural economy, we drive more than they do. And the justification that they use for this absolute mind-boggling insanity is the idea that, oh no, we put too many fuel-efficient cars on the road. They've been complaining to us for 20 years that we have to get better with our cars and design our cars better. Now they want to punish us for actually doing our jobs. So I bring this to your attention because I know this commission from time to time lobbies the legislature, puts resolutions out there saying what Franklin County does and does not agree with in policy. I wanted you to know that if you wanted to really get out there on that one at any point, I know I sure as hell would back you up.
All right. Anybody else like to?
You get a discount for motorcycles?
I have no idea. I just can't get over the stupidity of that crap.
They've been talking about that one for a few years now. Too many electric cars, apparently. Not buying enough gas, not paying enough tax.
Commissioners, have anything good of the board today?
Not today.
Seeing nothing, we are adjourned. Thank you all.